All right, new week. Excited for the opportunity to go to College Station, one of the great venues in all of college football. So looking forward to the trip out there. Got a big challenge. Coach Fisher, a ton of respect for him and his staff. This is an extremely well-coached team and an extremely talented team. They are dangerous in all three phases. Special teams-wise, every time we kick is a challenge for us. Obviously, they've got dangerous returners when we punt, and then dangerous returners when we kick off as well. So we've got to do a great job covering. They've already, I think the punt returner is averaging over 20 yards a return, already has a touchdown this season. He's a weapon anytime he touches the ball. Their defense, front seven, is scary good all across the board. Obviously, I mean, they're all top, five-star recruits, essentially. Linebackers are active. 45 is all over the field for him. Cooper leads the SEC in tackles for loss, I believe. He's fourth in sacks. We've got to account for him every single play, along with the defensive line. And then the secondary, big, long transfer from Boston College that's playing corner for him. Really good player. And, you look at statistically in the SEC, defensive statistics, they're right at the top in pretty much everything. Offensively, talented receivers, running backs. They got three guys that are all, elite speed, change of pace guys that can also run with great physicality. Offensive line is big and athletic. Quarterback, got a lot of respect for Max Johnson and his entire family. Got to know his brother Jake and the family. We were recruiting him as a tight end at Oklahoma, so think the world of their family and really impressed with Max and what he's doing. He's not a backup quarterback that's playing for him. He was a starting quarterback at LSU and came to College Station and showing what a capable quarterback he is now that he's gotten the opportunity to start with the injury to the previous quarterback, Connor. But really impressed with Max and his toughness sitting in the pocket. He's taking some shots, but he sits in there, he takes the hit and delivers a throw. And then his brother obviously is a fantastic tight end. We were recruiting him like crazy at Oklahoma during COVID, so spent a lot of time with him on FaceTime and things like that during that time also. And then the other tight end, 42, is a really good player for him. So veteran team, extremely talented team, very well coached team. Have had a couple tough losses here in the SEC that were, essentially both games came down late in the fourth quarter. So we'll have to play well, and excited about the opportunity, like I said, in a great venue. Injury-wise, Juice won't play. I'd say Amari and Brown is doubtful, and then literally every single other person you're going to ask me about is questionable. They were all out there today. They all were not full speed necessarily. They were all limited in their own way. But hopefully as we go throughout the week, they'll get closer and closer to being close to 100% and able to play on game day. Questions? You communications class guys, David always gets the first question over here. So write that down in your notes also as far as what you learned in the press conference.
Shane, a couple for you, a few for you. With Juice, will he be back this year? Do you know at this point?
I think there's a chance. I think I don't want to speak for Juice. I think if you ask Juice, I think he would tell you he would like to come back and play at some point this season. He's a competitor. He wants to be out there. He's in every meeting. He's engaged. He's talking. He's working like crazy to be able to get back.
And then from an outside perspective, i.e. a fan perspective, you get a lot of injuries. Folks start saying, what's going on with the strength coach and the strength program? How do you respond to that? And also, have you guys started considering some changes in the ways you do things like nutrition and just trying to get past this injury bug?
Yeah, no, great question, I think. You said you had a few. Is there one more coming after that, too? All right, we'll get to I was talking with Mo Kaba this morning. He and I were texting back and forth about something, and then obviously saw him in our meeting. He's in good spirits, and, we'll see what the future holds for him as well. Hate it for him that he's not playing right now, along with all of our injured guys. They all love football and love to play, and it's tough not being able to. So my heart breaks for them. Yeah, you're constantly looking at everything that you're doing, coaching, X's and O's, schedule, how we practice, how we travel, what we do on Fridays, what we do in spring practice. You're always, as the head coach, looking at how can we be better in every area. And certainly, so it's concerning when you have that many injuries at one position. I've never, in all my years of coaching, been around a year where you've had that many injuries at one position. But it's not like you can just point your finger at it either. I mean, Case and Henry got rolled up on against UNC. It doesn't matter how you train, practice, lift weights, whatever. It's going to happen. Some of the other injuries, it is what it is. So I don't think you make too big a deal out of it, but you do analyze and look at everything that you're doing year to year. And we always tweak, David, based on, the year before and how we can be better. And that's in nutrition, and that's in the training room, and that's in the weight room, and that's in coaching, everything. So certainly it's my job as the head coach to always, look at how we do things and how we can be better, without a doubt. But got great confidence and belief in everybody that's in this building and the roles they're responsible for. But we're 2-5. We all, starting with me, have to do them better than what we're doing them right now.
Shane, you've often said in the past, you want this program to be player-led, and you talked about after the game the other day, just talking to some of the upperclassmen, how important, when we're talking about the story of this season and how these next couple of weeks are going to be played out. What does that look like based on some of the teams you've been a part of, whether it be as a player, whether it be on coaching staffs, when you do go through a funk like this, but you still have a good part of the season still ahead of you?
Yeah, I think it's making sure our guys realize that, what all is still out there for them to attain. Like we had high expectations going into this season, and a lot of the goals that we have had at the beginning of the season aren't attainable, but a lot of the goals that these seniors had at the beginning of the season are still very much attainable. And not getting caught up so much. And I get it, we're judged on the record, but let's not get so caught up in we're 2-5 or 2-5 and lose sight of the things we have to be grateful for around here as well. And we get to play a game and coach a game that we love and all that as well. So that, I think, communication is critical during this time. Player to coach, coach to player, player to player. And that's what I told those leaders also. Like, they all hurt. These seniors, the Carry-On Joyner, who's given so much to this university, did not come back this season to be sitting here at 2-5. But, like I've told these seniors, this is your team. And whatever you want to get done, you need to communicate that, and it's on you guys. So we've empowered you as leaders, and now what are you going to do with it? And I've seen great signs of that with those guys communicating with one another, throughout the week, at practice, with their work ethic, and things like that as well. So like I've told you guys all along, we got great young men in this program, and if I felt – it'd be one thing if I woke up on Sunday mornings, or – really don't wake up because you hardly sleep on Saturday night after a loss. But when I get out of bed and come into the facility, if I came in here like, oh, God, like I got to go deal with these guys again today, that's not the way I feel. Like, even after a brutal loss on Saturday, gut-wrenching loss the Saturday before, I come in here on Sunday and I can't wait for the players to come into the building at 3 o'clock on Sundays and be around them. And that's the truth. So we got good young men. We got good people in this program. We got good leadership on this team. We all need to be better, but we got a lot of football left, and let's make sure we appreciate being around one another day in, day out too.
Shane, I do have a couple for you. You mentioned A&M and sacks. There are a lot of SEC teams. Sacks seems to be up in a lot of areas. What do you see? Is that a function of the defensive players that you're having to go against? Is it offensive line play that maybe isn't as good as it's been? What do you see from that?
That is a great question, and it really is, because I thought the same thing myself the other day. I was looking at stats in SEC games only, and you see the amount of sacks that these guys have in just SEC games. You're like, holy mackerel, on that as well. But it's not just, and we've given up way too many in SEC games, but then you see some of the other teams around us that have given up a lot of sacks as well. I wish I had a great answer for you. It is great. It is a great question. I think to me, it's a couple things. I know Texas A&M, they're starting a true freshman at offensive tackle. We are starting 2 true freshmen on the offensive line. So I do think there's some teams in this league that are starting freshmen in key positions, and there's no doubt about it in my mind. It's harder. The hardest thing to do as a true freshman is to play on the line of scrimmage, particularly on the offensive line. Not that going out there and playing receiver or DB is easy, but I've always believed this, that the farther away you are from the ball, it's a little bit easier to play as a freshman from a physical standpoint. We got true freshmen in there, and you're blocking 300-pound grown men on the other side that are going to be first-round draft picks, like last week at Missouri and like this week at Texas A&M for us. So I think you've got some offensive lines in this league that have some youth. You're playing some very, very talented defensive lines. People can talk about what's the difference in the SEC and the different conferences across the country. The defensive line is one of them. And no matter what anybody says, you can't argue with that. I mean, you just look at the defensive linemen in this league, and it's a who's who of guys that are going to be playing in the NFL in the next 3 years. And then I think also defenses are very multiple. You know, there's no defense that we play in this league that, okay, they're going to line up and 4 down and they're going to play 3 deep coverage and, all right, now go block them. I mean, you're playing teams and they're coming from everywhere. And I think the multiplicity of defenses in this league, I think the talented defensive linemen in this league, and then some offensive lines that maybe quite aren't where they need to be, all kind of adds up. But I thought the same thing when I was looking at it yesterday. So,
Yeah.
And your second question, sorry.
See, I appreciate that. Maybe I could be a football coach
Maybe.
someday. But Spencer has played at a consistently high level this season. What's his attitude as things maybe haven't gone the way he envisioned coming into this season?
Couldn't be better. I mean, he's amazing. He really is. He got the crap beat out of him on Saturday. Never complained. Never once came over there. Was continuing to lift up his teammates. Was continuing to try and pick up the freshmen. Was in there battling to the very end. I feel for him because I talk about these seniors that come back. Same thing with him. I mean, he came back and he's playing his butt off right now. He didn't expect to be 2-5. He didn't expect to, have some of the injuries that we've had on the offensive line. But his energy at practice, his demeanor within the team goes back to Mike's question about leadership. Be like Spencer and how he is handling his teammates, and then just his unselfishness. Like I got on the plane Saturday before he did, and I was sitting on the aisle. Not feeling good about myself or anything, waiting on everybody else to board. And he came by me and stopped and put his hand on my shoulder and apologized to me that they weren't able to get it done on Saturday. And I'm like, bro, I should be apologizing to you. I mean, you're the one that just got beat up out there, and I didn't coach well enough for you. But that's just, it's not fake. That's how he is, and that's the way he always has been. And couldn't be prouder of him. There's not another quarterback in the country I'd rather have than him leading this team. And he's got a great future in these next 5 games. There's still some great moments coming for him as a quarterback, and then he's got a great future as a quarterback after he leaves here at Carolina as well.
You talked about leaning on young guys in key positions. How have you seen them, especially with all these injuries that are happening now these last couple of days, stepping up to that challenge, now headed into a really tough atmosphere and trying to get this offense especially back into the end zone?
Yeah, the young guys stepping up in general, you're saying, I think they've done a great job of it. They continue to, you say, oh, you're not a freshman anymore. I mean, these guys have now played 7 games against really good competition, so they know what to expect, and they've been in tough environments. And we talked about it this morning in our team meeting, that going to College Station, I mean, it's another great environment that we get to go to. Like, this is why I know it's cliche, but it's why you come play in the SEC, so you can go into stadiums where there's 100,000 people in the stands and all that as well. And I continue to see those guys just get better, but also gain more and more confidence. That's the one cool thing about this freshman class is the ones that are playing a lot of snaps. You could argue Nick obviously played close to 60 plays on Saturday, Nicholas Harbor. So you could argue he's like a starting receiver now. So if you count him, you count Kilgore, Judge Collier is our third corner, which he's basically a starter if you're our third corner. Tro, was that like 5 true freshmen that you're starting? But none of those guys have I ever felt like, oh my God, like this moment's too big for them. Not one time. And that's a credit to them and their families and their background. Now, do they need to perform better at times? Sure. Do we need to help them do that at times? Absolutely. But, you don't worry about them because they're great young men, and the moment hasn't been too big for them at any point, this season. And this is obviously our last road game coming up, and this is another rocking environment that we're going to go to. But it's one of the great venues in college football, and it's a great opportunity for them to go out there and compete against a really good team.
To go back to Spencer, I mean, with potentially all three of your starting receivers out and all the injuries on the line, does it change anything with how you have him protect himself in the pocket and things like that? Does it have to change things schematically for you guys, going forward here?
Yeah, I mean, I know it it didn't look like it on Saturday, but we tried to last Saturday. We tried to get the ball out of his hands quicker. We tried to move the pocket. We threw a couple screens to running backs as well, just to try and slow down the pass rush. We double teamed people and things like that. And I said it on the teleconference Sunday night that when I turned on the tape, you expected to see like just Missouri guy after Missouri guy just running through our offensive linemen, and it wasn't necessarily that. It was just one play it might be the right tackle, one play it might be the tight end, one play it might be the quarterback, one play it might be the center, one play it might be the left guard, the running back, the receiver, the left tackle, whoever it might be. We all had a hand in it from a protection standpoint. But yes, to answer your question, we tried to do that last week. We obviously, as coaches, didn't do a good enough job of trying to design ways to help Spencer. But at some point too, like, you got to do your job, and at some point you got to be able to protect. And our five offensive linemen, they're on scholarship too, and they need to be able to get it done. We recruited them here to South Carolina for a reason. They're really good players. We beat other schools for a lot of these guys as well because they're really good players, and we have confidence in them as well. So, yes, we're going to help Spencer also. We can't ask him – the other thing is being able to run the ball. We can't ask him to throw the ball 40 times like he did against Missouri, and we can't sit back there and ask him to be in true drop-back six-man protection for 40 times. But we have to be able to do that some, whether it's five-man protection and we're free release in the back, or we're in empty, or whether it's max protection. We got to be able to mix it up and certainly help him, particularly with the defensive line that we faced last week, we'll face this week, and that we'll see as the year goes on also.
Hey, Shane, when you look at all the injuries and practice, what's the biggest challenge when it comes to getting the biggest benefits out of practice? And also, you mentioned you're going on the road for the last time.
Yep.
Have you thought about changing up your routine on the road or anything?
Yeah, as far as practice, biggest challenge is just being able to get the physical work that you need. As a head coach, I struggle with it. I think about it a lot, just what we do in practice. And yes, we need the good on good work, which we did some of that today, ones versus ones, and good on good, and let's go play ball. We did a lot of that today. But you got to be smart with how much you're doing it. And then probably the biggest challenge, so that's one, is just balancing how much you do it. And then to me, probably the biggest challenge is you guys have heard me say it before, we don't do a ton of scout team work, meaning, okay, you guys that are redshirting, y'all go over there and emulate or simulate the Texas A&M offense against our starting defense. And then you guys that are redshirting are not playing much on our defense. You guys are going to be the Texas A&M defense against the South Carolina offense. We don't do a ton of that, but you've got to do some of it to be able to prepare for the week. And when you're down on linemen like we are, it's really impossible to do that because you got to have enough linemen over there with the offense to do what you need to do from an offensive standpoint, which you're taking guys that are typically maybe over there on the scout team. So today, for example, our left guard and our left tackle on the scout team were Lucas Vose and Cam Sandlin. They're tight ends. And they're playing left guard and left tackle, trying to, show Tonka and Boogie and those guys what it's going to be like on Saturday. And they're doing a great job, but they're not offensive linemen. So that's the biggest challenge. And then as far as going on the road, you always look at it. We may do some things on Friday just to kind of tweak things a little bit. It'd be one thing if I felt like we were just 2 years ago, we had some first quarters where we got the crap kicked out of us from like the jump. That's not happening right now. Georgia, we were up 14-3 at the half. Tennessee, we were leading after the first quarter. Missouri, we got a 3-and-out. We went down the field and had a chance to score and didn't get points, and then we'll see what happens Saturday. So I think it's a little bit different than what it was 2 years ago. We're starting games on the road in hostile environments better, but obviously we're not playing well enough. We didn't show up to Columbia or show up to Athens to play a good first quarter, first half. We got to figure out how to put 4 quarters together. So like David asked, you're always looking at like routines, but to me it starts more in how you're practicing and what you're doing throughout the week. But yeah, with it being our last one and we haven't won a road game yet, we'll certainly, look, is there a better way of doing things and may tweak some things with the schedule on Friday.
Trey Knox was in here earlier talking about how it feels like some of the younger players are trying to be too perfect all the time in practice. As a coach, how do you balance maybe trying to improve technique and stability, but also understanding that guys just can't be perfect, like Trey was saying?
I think whether it's a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, to me as a coach, you never want them worried about making a mistake and trying to be so perfect. I'm far from a great golfer, but when I'm on the golf course, if I'm standing over with my 7-iron and I'm like, please don't shank this, don't screw up, I'm probably going to shank it or screw up. And it's the same thing if you're a freshman receiver or senior quarterback. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about with our freshmen. They're great young men, and they want to please, and they want to they're so appreciative and grateful. Like Nick Harbor walked in my office Sunday night and thanked me for, I told you guys the story after he scored the touchdown against Furman, and then he comes in my office and thanks me the other night for trusting him to play 57 plays in the game on Saturday. That's just like that's the young men that we have on this team, and they want to please and they want to do well, and they don't want to let us down. They don't want to let their teammates down, like the seniors. But it's also, our older guys, they know this. Like these guys are gonna make mistakes, and as long as you're working hard and putting forth the effort, we can live with the mistakes. And that's what we've tried to convey to those guys too. That you're gonna make mistakes. I'm gonna make mistakes. I do every game. I do every day. And but do it just with great effort. And that's why our players have so much respect for Nick Harbor, for example, because they see him every day before practice. He's out there catching footballs before practice even starts, or catching tennis balls for like ball drill stuff. And they see him after practice get extra work with Liette and some of those guys. So they see the work that these guys put in, and that's why there's great respect for those young guys. And then those young guys know that we have their backs, and as long as they're working hard and putting forth the effort, we can live with the mistakes.
Hey, Shane, so when you're in these fourth down situations, whether it's at midfield or when you're driving down the field, what kind of goes into your decision-making? Is it something that just comes down to the confidence in the play calling to get the right play off, the momentum the offense is kind of building, or is it just like the time in the game? What's kind of your thought process when you're in those spots?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of all of that. How you're playing offensively, how you're playing defensively, how you're playing special teams. I've told you guys before, I watched literally every play of offense, defense, and special teams going into a game that our opponent does. So I have an idea of what the other team's offense is and defense and special teams, and that helps me with the decision making, and I'm far from perfect from that standpoint. But, there's some coaches that, they're 100% analytics driven, and they're going to go by the book. And if the book says if you hit the 30-yard line, it's 4th and 5 or less, go for it. I don't. That's, we rely on analytics to a certain degree, but not as far as making every decision in the game. I don't do that. It's more of a feel, and each situation is different. I know I've been criticized for kicking the field goal inside the 5-yard line the other day, and to me that was one where I felt like we had 3 pretty good calls on first down, second down, third down, that we didn't do a great job of executing mentally. And in my mind, it was like we've had 3 plays to get this thing in. We've had 3 pretty good play calls, and we didn't execute them properly. Not that I don't have confidence in our guys on fourth down to get it done, but also let's get points and keep it a 2-score game. That was the thinking on that one. The fourth down, I think I told you guys in the post-game press conference, the first fourth down of the game where we missed the field goal. Initially, I was going to punt. Initially, we're in field goal range, so it was, hey, we're in field goal range. Let's be smart with the ball here, and it's an automatic 3, and then we took the sack. So then at that point, initially I was going to punt and then, let the play clock run down and call timeout because the wind was swirling and wanted to see what the wind was going to do, because certainly we were in Mitch's range at that point and felt like we could get 3 points there. Probably the start of the timeout was going to punt. We had the punt team and field goal both up. The wind kind of flipped a little bit. We had it at the back and kicked the field goal there and missed. But the fourth downs that I've gone for, I can remember 2 years ago against Kentucky at home, we went for 2 fourth downs that we didn't get in plus territory instead of kicking field goals, and then we lose by 6. And it's easy for everybody to say, well, dang it, if he had kicked those 2 field goals, we would have gone to overtime. But that was a situation I just felt like in the game at that time we had an opportunity to get it. So it goes back to how you're playing. It goes back to the play calls that I know we're going to call on fourth down. Going forward on some fourth downs against Tennessee last year, knowing it's going to be a high-scoring game. So I think every game is different. But a lot of those things that we discussed, me, Dow, Clayton, Pete, before the game also at the hotel, kind of how we're going to coach this game. And this week, for example, these guys, when we kick a field goal, you better hold on for dear life because this defensive line I'm talking about, they do a hell of a job blocking field goals too, So, or do you want to punt the ball down there to number 0 all those times as well? So I know that's like a whole different press conference, whole different thing that I just gave you for one answer, but it's a lot that goes into it. Sorry, I should have just said I go by analytics and I go by what the book tells me, and then we move on. And y'all could have gotten like 6 more questions in by now. Sorry. Huh?
Sip after that, or you
No, I'm good. I need to sit down is what I need.
Last week you kind of alluded to it, but anytime a team is on a slide like y'all are on, folks on the outside, worry about the current recruiting class and what they're talking about, what the reception's been like with those guys. So what's sort of what you guys are hearing from those guys and how you feel about them?
Everything's been great. Usually after games, Usually after games, my wife wasn't at the game Saturday in Missouri, and so she was probably the first person that sent me a text. I always get a phone call from my mom, win or lose, and then without a doubt, within the first 3 people I hear from is always a certain quarterback that's committed to us. Like before the game's even over, I think I get a text from him. So it's been positive. I think those guys realize, how close we are, and we talk to them every week. We're on the phone with recruits. I was on the phone with a recruit last night late in my office, and Wednesday nights we sit up here as a staff and just talk FaceTime recruits for an hour as a staff. And they've been good. I get it. It's a long time to signing day, but those guys, a lot of them they were at the Florida game 2 weeks ago, and they saw, how that game went, and they know, some of the issues that we have right now. They see the young players that are out there playing, and I think the message that I've gotten from all of the recruiting class is how excited they are to get here to start helping us on the field as well.
Coach, you mentioned it earlier, how you felt like your freshmen, have been big enough for the moment so far. I wanted to ask, how much does that impress you? And then 2, does that give you any confidence that you guys are recruiting the right kind of players to play for this program?
Yeah, absolutely. I knew you get to know these guys in recruiting, certainly, and this is probably the class that I knew best once they signed, because this was a class that we spent a couple years, recruiting, and I was able to go into Nicholas Harbor's home and go into Jalen Kilgore's home and Desmond's home and on and on and on and on and on, and get to know their families through a couple years of recruiting them. So you feel pretty good about the people that you're bringing into your program, getting to know their families. Then I had a really good idea that, okay, we got the right people in here. And I think I've said it before, when they got here in January and they had the semester that they had academically. They were lights out from an academic standpoint, and still are. Last spring semester was the highest GPA we've ever had here as a football team, and a lot of that was because of our freshmen coming in and doing a great job. So I knew we had the right kind of people, but you don't really know on the field until you start playing games how they're going to react to that environment. But, North Carolina game, when Jalen Kilgore's in the game on like the 3rd play of the game or whatever it was, and did great and has continued to do great, you say, okay, we got the right people. And, I wish that guys like Marquis were healthy and playing, but, this whole class, it's great young men. I enjoy being around them, whether it's Lenoris or, Marquis or all these guys. The guys on defense, they work hard and don't get me wrong. There's freshmen, you got to put your arm around them really tight some days and talk to them about certain things. They're learning and growing like all college freshmen are, but they're good young men. Derek Moore, Demo, he meets with the freshmen every Monday morning, and I usually pop my head in there on them, and that was in there yesterday with them, and they're good young men, and they're excited about the future here at Carolina.
So kind of going back to this road game this week, this is the last one. Is there any sort of sense of relief that after this weekend you're done, you get to worry about playing in Williams-Brice the rest of the year? Or is it just like we're not even going to acknowledge that moment until after Saturday?
Yeah, I think it's not even, you don't even acknowledge it until after Saturday. For me, it's another opportunity as a competitor. What more could you want as a competitor going on the road on national television in an awesome environment? That's all we're focused on. And certainly our guys are aware. We talked about it earlier in the season that, look, we got a tough schedule these first 7 games, our first 8 games away from home. But then we come back and we got 4 home games in Columbia in November. But, right now it's the mindset of what do we have to do to go play really well on Saturday out in College Station, and let's focus on that. And, we know what's after that. But it's not let's get through this week and take a breath. Far from it, because we got 4 really good teams coming in here in November. Right now the mindset is, what do we have to do the rest of Tuesday, to put ourselves in position to go perform well and coach well on Saturday.
I guess I'll 2 if possible. If not, first,
many as you want. So keeps me from having to go watch their third down defense as soon as I walk out of here.
The first one, you've mentioned so much about trying to figure out how to practice when you have all these injuries. And I've heard of, other college coaches trying to use sometimes the portal to just get offensive line depth to anticipate this. But you're talking about, hey, the NFL's only got 53 guys, and somehow they figure it out. Have you spent this last week or these last couple weeks calling around to different people who've maybe encountered this or NFL contacts of like, all right, how do you guys figure this out?
Yeah. Y'all are like on like a whole different like my wavelength today. It's really weird. So you have a question that I was already thinking about, and yes, I did that. Yesterday, called 2 NFL head coaches that I've got good relationships with that are head coaches in the NFL, and just talk to them, about that, because you do have a smaller roster, and managing the roster when you do have that many people. But then also too, Jordan, like we got a lot of coaches on our staff that have spent time in the NFL, either as a player or coach, so you can kind of talk to them also. But certainly, pick the brains of a couple NFL coaches that I respect. Yesterday, won't tell you who, but they're both in the AFC, so you can narrow it down to, would that be 16 teams as well. So that was beneficial, just kind of picking their brain on some things. And then yesterday I reached out to. I'm always trying to. You don't have a lot of time to talk to people, but certainly reaching out to people. Talked to Dawn Staley, yesterday for a while about some stuff, and not necessarily how to practice the offensive line. She can't help me with that, but certainly other things. And then some coaches that I have relationships with, just picking their brains on always just ideas and bouncing things off of them. But specifically with the practice part of it, yeah, absolutely, because they have half the roster size that we do, and the practices are a little bit different in the NFL. I get it, but because they have them from – there's no 4-hour rule in the NFL in regards to how many hours we can have them in the building, so we got a lot that we have to pack in the 4 hours we're allowed. But you can always learn from some of them from that standpoint.
And lastly, obviously the receivers' injuries, guys are going to have to step up. You mentioned Nick Harbor, but on Sunday you kind of said Omega Blake is doing a better job making sure his life is in order off the field. How have you seen him mature off the field over the last year?
I think just the work that he's putting in on football. Not that he wasn't doing it before, but he is putting in the work to try and learn the game plan each week, and putting in the work on the practice field, just doing extra throughout the week. That's what I've seen. And please don't interpret that as saying that he was bad off the field. I think because he wasn't. He's not a guy that's in trouble and showing up on lists all the time. I think it's just more consistency from him day in, day out, be the same person. And, Omega's always been a talented guy. You weren't here 2 years ago, but Omega played in the bowl game for us in the Mayo Bowl. I mean, we tried to throw like a reverse pass with him where he was the guy that was going to throw the ball against UNC. And I think we got hit for like a 10-yard loss, but it's a good try. But we used him in the bowl game a couple years ago. So he's always been talented. And he's just gotten more consistent off the field, and it's important to him. And some of the players see that too, because they know that he's putting in the work to learn and put himself in the best position to be successful each Saturday. At all? All right, thank you. Thanks for coming, class.